pause. What are we building? We're building the simplest material flow system that we could envision. What is material flow? Like, sounds interesting. Sounds like a bodily problem. No, it's moving inventory. It's moving WIP, material, or parts from any location within the four walls to another location within the four walls of a warehouse or a manufacturing facility. It's about 80% of the work in warehousing and about 40% in manufacturing. What you see behind you is our Gen 1 bot. Wow. What's different about this bot than other bots? First of all, it's got a fun neck shape. This is without its covers on, so...
I think it's huge. I was looking at your website. I thought it would be like this big.
So yeah, it's designed to move pallets, and pallets can be pretty big. They can weigh 3,000 pounds. If you've walked around Home Depot and you've seen pallets of concrete, or you go to Costco and you see like pallets of Coca-Cola, they can be very heavy. So this is designed to move material in 3 dimensions, like up, down, left, right, forward, backward, from any cell to any cell, anywhere. I'll show you the next gen a little bit later, but we've been around for about 2 years. That seems old for us, but that design is less than a year old. This is our home in South San Francisco. We've been here since October of 2020. South San Francisco is the industrial city. Here's the bot in action. No. This is Elroy. This is Elroy. Elroy has seen experience down out at our customer site, Albertson. And then Elroy is going to drop its payload off in this cell.
So how much faster is this than what's currently in warehouses?
Yeah, so when we view fast, what do businesses care about? They care about throughput and density, right? Throughput is like, if I have a giant black box, how much can I put into the system? How much can I take out of it at the same time? What we're not trying to do here is win the fastest individual bot award, but what we can do here is massively parallelize. Just like CPUs over the last several years have, instead of making a core faster, you add 4, 8, multiple cores. That's effectively what we're doing here for automation. We're making a simple, relatively cost-effective bot do any sort of task, but then if you want to make the system go faster, you simply add more bots. As you can see behind you at Albertson, actually, this is working 24/7. This is not like, hey, let's turn it on for our interview. Like, this has been working 24/7 for the last month and a half. And we've gotten it to a level of reliability and performance where we've basically achieved the service level agreements in a very fast time. So that's kind of the brief tour. Happy to head over there.
Yeah, we'd love to talk more about just like how this came to be in your mind and relationship with Eclipse, how that formed.
Sure.
Little highs and lows, everything in between. So kind of dig into you and Seth and everything else about the business too.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the focus of this show, like I told you on the walk over here, is, it's pitch perfect. It's the relationship between the founder and the funder. What was that first meeting like between the two of y'all? Who was pitching who? Because a lot of times, sometimes the VC is the one pitching the founder. And so we kind of want to know just what was the first meeting between the two of y'all? How did y'all meet? Was it through an email, a connection between friends? Chris, do you kind of want to set the stage for how y'all met?
Sure. Yeah, it was. I think it was a casual meeting. I was not set on starting a company yet, but really good friend Justin Butler, who was a fellow partner of Seth's, and stopped by the Eclipse office to talk about what are they seeing in manufacturing supply chain. Met with Justin. He brought Seth in. We talked about just kind of general challenges, general ideas. I think at the end of the meeting, it was a little more clear that Eclipse knew what they were doing. I was really impressed with Seth. That started off a few different conversations. Over time, we aligned on kind of what we're going to build a little bit more clearly and kind of set us off in the right direction.
And what are you building? Sorry to cut you off, but what are you building? Give some context of who you are, Chris, and what your company is.
Yeah, so co-founder of Mytra, founded about 2 years ago. We're building a universal material flow system. Material flow is the lifeblood of any manufacturing facility, warehousing, et cetera. Simply moving material around is 80% of the work in a warehouse and 40% of the work in a manufacturing facility. I spent 7 years at Tesla. We struggled to solve this problem during Model 3 ramp. I was asked to come in and lead the automation systems that were supplying that. It almost killed the company, and the complexity and the challenges of those systems really inspired me to take my next role at Tesla, which was leading the mobile robotics team, which later became leading the humanoid program. So a lot of kind of diverse exposure and experience to industrial automation and robotics. And it's a problem that is worth solving. It's a problem that is done largely in just extremely complex ways, expensive, costly ways. And 90% of these facilities around the world don't have any meaningful automation. So it's one of the biggest market opportunities that is just in plain sight.
Yeah. Seth, how'd you first hear about Mytra and what they're doing?
Yeah, so I remember that story a little bit differently.
Let's hear it.
So I heard through the grapevine, through some leakage of intel that Chris was thinking about leaving Tesla and starting a company.
Uh-oh.
And so I outbound him on LinkedIn. And he's like, hey, funny you should mention, or funny you should reach out, because I'm actually going over to your offices to meet with Justin. Justin's one of my partners at Eclipse. And you look at Chris's background, and what jumps off the page almost immediately is, here's a guy who's built shit that's actually seen production and scaled, right? And I think in this emerging domain that is applied autonomy, robotics, embodied AI, however you want to call it, you have systems that can operate in the physical world and the complexity of the physical world in a way that meets the reliability and performance expectations of a scaled operation like a Tesla. There's just not that many people like that, right? So that was the thing that drew me to reach out to him. He came in and he had a cute little notebook, and he had 5 or 6 different ideas. Yeah. 4 of them, if I recall, were absolutely terrible.
Sounds about right. I think that notebook is in my drawer.
One of them was, actually, I think it still is a good idea, but we'll do that one. That's the next company. It's 10 years in the future. It was something crazy. And then what ended up becoming Mytra was the last one. And I had been looking to invest in this idea for about 6 years, going back to some of my early work at companies like Six River Systems and Kindred and other examples of automation in the supply chain logistics category. So I knew that there was a really big opportunity in this kind of general idea that he had scratched out in Chicken Scratch on his notebook. And so the combination of Chris's background, the massive opportunity that this sort of solution design, system design had in the general marketplace, we just jumped at the opportunity to seed fund the business and begin to get to working together. That's how I remember it.
That's about right.
Okay,
I do now that I do remember some conveniently converged.
He gets 1,000 DMs a day. He's like, yeah, sure, I'm down, dude. Whatever.
I think at that point I was, wasn't opening much of my laptop at that point.
What was happening at Tesla in your life at that time that you had 6 ideas to go do something else?
Oh boy. So the challenge at Tesla was you're always given 8 responsibilities. Everything is a priority 1, and of course we know what the definition of priority is do everything at the same time. Yeah. And so I think that building a humanoid was fascinating. You work with some of the brightest engineers in the world. You solve some really cool technical problems. For me, though, I joined Tesla to ship product to millions of people. That project is a bit of a moonshot, and there's a lot of fundamental challenges that have to be solved for that to achieve scale at the autonomy that it needs, with the reliability and the cost and effectively the diversity of applications. So I kind of saw my life over the next 5 to 10 years, and as mostly focused on the research domain, that wasn't really going to be the right fit for me. So ended up leaving Tesla, and then during that time, I had an opportunity to reflect on all the different challenges we saw across Model 3, ranging from packaging to the software was too complex, to these material flow problems, to we couldn't figure out how to do doors on. You think putting doors on a car and trying to automate that, of course that's a solved problem. It's not a solved problem. Putting seals on a car is not a solved problem. And of course, all the different challenges in humanoids. So I kind of reflected on all those different areas and said, hey, what is the balance of huge opportunity, but also achievable, solvable? Doesn't require some rocket science project. And then that led us to what we're building now.
Seth, when you reached out, did Six Rivers already get acquired at that point?
Yeah, Six River was acquired by Shopify in 2019.
Okay, and so when you were reaching out to Chris, did you think this could be the next big, acquisition for you? You were, I'm not sure how long you've been at Eclipse for, but maybe was this your next big investment that you were going to make in your head that, could return the fund?
So I've been at Eclipse since we started, which is almost 10 years ago. I spent the earlier part of my career at GE working in manufacturing automation and applied robotics and across industrial inspection, manufacturing automation, and a little bit of supply chain logistics. We left in our respective roles and started Eclipse because we just saw this massive opportunity that to invest in the best and brightest engineers trying to go solve really hard multidisciplinary engineering challenges in order to bring solutions and services to the industries that operate in the physical world, and just so happen to make up 80% of global GDP. Back then, it's funny, I was reflecting on this earlier today, people laughed at us, right? They said, like, hardware, like, what are you doing? Like, it's too challenging, too expensive, too long sales cycle, low gross margin. And now the prevailing perspective of the day is if you don't have hardware in your solution, it's not defensible, right? Like, AI is going to enable computer science to be done by anybody. And so you need some more differentiation and defensibility. I think that's just a remarkable thing to see how much can change in a decade.
When was the response, though, when people would laugh at y'all back in the day when you were trying to start
That's the best. The best thing in the world in building companies from scratch or in venture is when you get that type of response, because then you know for sure that it's non-consensus. And the only way to build something of consequence is to build something in a non-consensus category and to be correct, right? Because if you're consensus and correct, there's really not much value arbitrage there. And if you're non-consensus and incorrect, you're just, you made a big mistake.
You're crazy.
You're crazy, right? You got it wrong, right? But if you're non-consensus and correct, then as a small company, you have time. You have the 2, 3, 4, 5 years where nobody's paying attention to go build something of consequence and then go take the market by storm once everybody kind of realizes that that's the right place to be spending time. So going back to Eclipse, right? Like, that was our wrinkle in the market, right? It was like, we were going to go find those types of teams and back them early and help build them, help them improve their odds of success along the way. Here we are 10 years later, and I think it's a pretty important place to be spending time thinking and building companies, because getting back to your original point, this type of solution, targets a multi-trillion-dollar industry, right? It's focused specifically on how goods move through the physical world and how people access them in more efficient and economical mechanisms. And that's a really important problem to be working on, right? Remember back to the COVID days when no one could get toilet paper and eggs and all that kind of stuff? Like, that's a supply chain. That's a supply chain issue, right? And the fragility of our supply chain is very, very clear. And so, like, this company is on a mission to go solve for that fragility and create resiliency across a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Nice.
And without that perspective, I don't know if we would have been talking to Seth. I don't even know, if we would have gotten the right backing from a firm that has that much conviction for that long with that experience of building these kinds of companies. Seth and Lior's conviction on this were one of the key drivers of Mytra's success in a way.
I didn't quite fully answer your question. So Six River Systems was a fantastic company. It was started by folks that were part of the core team at Kiva Systems. But my insight in working with that company was that what you were seeing in modern robotics applied to supply chain was a proliferation of these point solutions that only solve a small portion of the end customer's actual problem. And if you see a proliferation of those point solutions, at the end of the day, the customer says, I got too many of these things that I'm trying to keep tabs on, right? And my overall operation defaults to the lowest common denominator within that material flow. And so the real thesis behind what I was looking for was like a net new primitive in hardware and in software that could tackle a more complete and holistic portion of the customer's material flow, right? And really be a solution that wasn't just like a quick fix or an incremental improvement across their operations, but a net new primitive that could transform the business in the way it operates.
Hey, y'all. Do you enjoy listening to podcasts? Since you're listening to one right now, I'm going to assume you do. And if you enjoy podcasts, you need to download the Overlap app. We all love long-form podcast conversations, but who has the time to always stay up to date with 3-hour-long interviews? Overlap solves that problem for you by providing only the best podcast moments. The app's AI assistant curates playlists of personalized podcast clips that are tailored to your interests and favorite creators, like us. Just prompt it with any topic and instantly get a playlist of the best short-form moments. So jump over to the App Store now, like right now, and download Overlap. You can also find a link to download below in our description. It's free and we highly recommend it. The app actually does recommend great content, and I learn something new every day from my playlists. Thanks so much to Overlap for sponsoring this episode. So Chris, you guys raised $50 million in your most recent round. Is that enough money at this point to do what Mytra is doing? Like it's a massive undertaking to kind of change the way warehouse moving and just the whole system of warehouses. Mm-hmm. So is 50 million enough, or is that going to be something that if this succeeds, you're going to continue to need more money soon here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right amount to get us to the next phase, right? In starting a business, it's risky, and your most dilutive capital is always like that round, right? And so the goal is to tackle the problems to get you to that next major inflection point. And maybe that next major inflection point means we've got revenue and we can choose to be self-sustaining. Maybe that next inflection point is we know exactly what we need to do to scale the heck out of this business, and let's go get the fuel to do that. So short answer is, it is like we will likely need more money in about 2 years, but we will be in a very different state of the company. 50 million, is that the right number? How is that? Some people might, that's really low. 10 years ago, to achieve the level of maturity and tech proof that we've had, maybe that would have cost twice as much or 3 times as much. I think there's a lot of very smart engineers these days that have tackled the integrated hardware software problem that Tesla's a good example, right? No business shipping the Model X or even the Model S when Tesla did, but there's such elegant vertical integration across the hardware and software stacks that you can ship hardware prematurely and effectively fix it in firmware over time. I mean, every few weeks, Tesla sends 20, 30 fixes over the air. You get those, here are the cool features in your Model 3, and here's like the 400 other like janky fixes that we shipped right now that you didn't even notice because we have seen what hardware limitations are, and we found unlocks in software. And that ability allows us to ship hardware faster with effectively less resources to get it to that kind of core inflection point. So, and that's how you have to start hardware software companies these days. You have to be capital efficient. You have to be fast.
You were saying a little bit about like this 50 million will help you solve the problems that are happening right now. What are some of those problems that this capital will help solve for the company?
Yeah, so we've, a few months ago, we have demonstrated this product in production at Albertsons. It's a real customer. It's also not a demonstration project operating 4 hours a day. It is operating 24/7 in a refrigerated environment, serving real food to real people, and we shipped that in 2 years. Okay. That was a core milestone to get through to the B. We demonstrated...
By the way, that is something that would not be possible 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And even today, to go from, a guy in a deck and a dream
barely
barely a deck, not even a deck, right? A
chicken scratch.
And that outcome in 2 years is unprecedented in this ecosystem. I want to put an exclamation point on that. And right? It's like hardware, full stack systems at the speed of software. It's just incredible.
And I want you to finish your answer, but then I want to hear later, how'd you celebrate that win with Albertsons? But I'll let you finish your.
Yeah, I've got a reasonable answer for that. And so, what do we need to do to get to the next milestone? That system that we shipped today has not been designed for 5 years of taking a beating in a warehouse environment. So we need to build the bot and the system, including the structure and the software, to effectively target that 5, 10, 15 years of lifespan that these customers expect. That is not easy to do. That requires testing and validation, and it requires very disciplined engineering approach, which you can't do in 2 weeks. So that's really the goal of the next 18 months. In parallel, it is expand on the customer traction. So we effectively we're very confident we have product market fit based on the customers we've announced today and the customers we haven't. But we need to then turn that into actual systems deployed with revenue and bookings, et cetera. It's really just taking the commercial phase to the next level.
And how'd you celebrate that first win?
So coincidentally, we realized this is we've achieved enough success with customer traction and product launch and great investors on board that it's time to effectively tell the world what we're doing. So we had a public launch late July. Seth was there. The folks from Green Oaks were there. A lot of our investors were there. And a lot of the families from our employees were there too to celebrate this milestone. We had a bit of a show and tell where like all the engineering teams had their little kind of sections and booths, and my mom was walking around talking to our software engineers being like, what does that thing do? And then we celebrated late into the night with some fun food and drink as well. So it was a good opportunity to kind of celebrate what we've built as a company in a fun environment, reward our friends and family who have been super important throughout the journey, and then let a little steam loose.
Yeah, that's very cool. I read an article about Mytra that was saying that the AI robot y'all are building is going to kill the forklift. Would you say that is something you stand behind, or you would say, not really?
Yeah, so that is not a title I recommended, nor I think it's interesting and catchy. I think it's important to recognize the forklift is extremely good at stacking things vertically, right? It's a very unique and versatile piece of equipment that, because of that versatility, is often used for tasks that probably aren't necessarily ideal. I mean, you walk over to some factories and you'll see forklifts driving like thousands and thousands of meters across the facility. That is not the best use of a forklift. It's like taking a Ferrari to run groceries, right? Forklifts
you
are
look
good
cool doing it though.
at stacking things, right? So, in a lot of scenarios, the forklift is and will continue to be your best tool for stacking product. But when you look at what are you trying to do in a warehouse, right? I have a whole bunch of stuff. I have a volumetric area. I want to put a bunch of stuff in and I want to take it out. Our system can do that very efficiently, very densely. And you look at a forklift, you've got 8,000 pounds of counterweighted balance to carry a cantilevered load of maybe 3,000 pounds, right? Well, if you actually don't cantilever that, you don't need 8,000 pounds of lead-acid batteries. And so, you can do these things much more efficiently in a more tailored solution than something which is effectively designed to stack things. So I don't think we're killing the forklift anytime soon, but a lot of these operations which make exclusive use of the forklift to do these things, we can do from a first principles perspective. It's just a much more materials dense cost, electricity, across the board. It's just a more efficient way to do things.
I want to go back to the first meeting in the pitch for Mytra. Whenever Chris came into that building, the Eclipse building, y'all met each other for the first time. How long until that term sheet was signed? How much time elapsed between then?
Days?
Was it that quick?
No more than 2 weeks.
It was, yeah. I think I had a trip to Modex, the material flow. We met, and then I zipped out to Modex to check out. Made a bunch of, yes, thank you for saying. You made some intros, very valuable intros, extremely valuable intros, game-changing intros.
Who's your third hire was your head of sales?
That's true, yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It was pretty quick.
Yeah,
Did
few
you know
weeks,
that pretty
and then
soon?
I did actually physical sign the paper term sheet and delivered it in hand to these guys. No DocuSign here.
Very cute, very sweet.
Did you have a pretty good indication, like, yeah, we're going to get this signed just because of what we provide and also the close friendship that was gonna be built?
I think that would be too overconfident and arrogant to say like Chris is a smart guy. Chris had other people that he could have worked with. I thought the question you're asking was were we pretty convicted quickly that this was the right person, team, everything to back? But and the answer is yeah, for sure, right? Because the two most important things of three that I look for are number one, the market, right? And it's not just like a bottoms down McKinsey study, how big's the TAM. It's who's the customer, what's their pain, is this a nice to have or need to have problem that you're solving, what's their procurement methodology, what's their willingness to pay, how does that map back to unit economics for the solution, how many of those customers are, there's a lot of that you want to dig into in the market, but I already knew that all that was true, right? I knew that the right team together with the right systems architecture, we could build a company of consequence here. And so then the question becomes where's that team, right? And so we'd met with other folks over the years and just hadn't found that right combination. The things you look for on the team side is especially early on, is the ability to build and sell, right? Can I actually get into the first principles from an engineering perspective of like what needs to be built? Not the brochure, not like the flowery Modex card that you hand out, but like what's the spec sheet, right? Meters per second, thermal requirements, battery power, integration methodologies, all that kind of stuff. Can I back somebody that's going to do that work down to the atomic layer? And then can they sell, right? Can they sell investors? Can they convince the best talent in the world to come join? Can they go weasel their way into customers' environments when they're one guy or 10 people at a company? And it was very clear to me and to my partners from the outset that Chris was a demonstration of both those characteristics.
Nice. So kind of wrapping up here in closing, I wanted to ask you both, I've just been thinking about this notepad and like what was written on it. I want to kind of ask you both this. Share a little more about what was actually written on that notepad, and 2.5 years later, have you kind of realized that vision today, or is there still a lot more work to do to get to what was written on the notepad?
I probably expunged from my memory the 3 crappy ideas, although I was saying
I have too. I just remember the other one that's good that we'll do in like 15 years.
Yeah.
When we stop recording, I want to hear those off the record.
Yeah, this second episode is we'll dig into the like feasibility of the terrible ideas. I'm pretty sure what was on that notepad was basically, for lack of a better words, a box moving in 6 arrows, right? Going up, forward, backward, left to right, top down. And if you could solve that problem, just allow a piece of inventory to move fully kinematically free in 3 dimensions, good things would happen. Wasn't sure exactly how we're going to do it. Was it a grappling mechanism? Was it a rack and pinion drive? Was it linear actuators? As it turns out, it was none of those. Our mechanism is something that, through a lot of dead ends and iteration, we ended up building. And actually, you can see conveniently a lot of the iterations we have here. It was innovation. Necessity is the mother of innovation. There's a lot of unique needs for how to move something vertically at that payload, and those that led us down to this path. It was some very high-level sketches of a kinematically free material flow system.
Wow. How long since in that notepad, because it sounds like you have accomplished the vision, how long did it take?
We're just getting started, man.
Okay.
This is the only problems worth working on are ones where it takes you 10 years to get to the starting line. Mm-hmm. This is one of those problems, right? There is a multi-decade journey here to redefine how global supply chains operate. And the magnitude of that opportunity has got a T in front of it, right? It is a incredibly important, incredibly impactful set of problems that the world needs to have solved in a more comprehensive fashion. And that's the mission of this company.
So in your brain, what does success look like in 10 years from now? 20, 30, 40 years from now? Like if you can look back and say, we did everything that we could have done for this to all go perfectly well, what does that look like?
You want to go for it? All right. There is a void in, if you said, who is the number 1 robotics company in the world? I don't know, is it Tesla? Is it Boston Dynamics, right? There's a debate for that. Robotics is, I am very passionate about this. I can't say I've been passionate throughout my career, but it is the manifestation of software for the physical world. IoT was like phase 1. It was baby steps. I can gather information about the physical world in aggregate and pool it in a central location so that I can make intelligent decisions. Robotics is taking that and closing the loop. It's actuating. It's moving bits. It's moving matter that is controlled by software. There's so much opportunity in this world. You look around you, you look at the physical work being done around you, and it is all done largely absent of software. 80% of the world's GDP is run not by software, effectively. And so robotics is that loop closure. And we are solving the most consequential problem that we could find that we have the skill set to do in this arena. There are 500 more problems. So when you say, what is Mytra 30 to 40 years? If we're successful, we've tackled, every few years, potentially the next branch on that tree. And we've solved critical, physical infrastructure problems around material flow, supply chain, manufacturing, and potentially other adjacent industries like construction, all with form factors that we haven't even thought about today.
Economic productivity globally is driven by 2 core variables: allocation of capital and availability of labor. And across the supply chain industry today, capital is misallocated. It's wasteful, right? Like large organizations have to invest billions and billions of dollars just to hold excess inventory because they don't have the ability to respond flexibly and dynamically to the demands in real time. All of these operations are challenged by labor problems, right? Availability of labor, turnover of labor. And so, the success for us is bringing a heightened level of efficiency and efficacy to this multi-trillion-dollar category such that capital is allocated more effectively and efficiently and drives increased growth globally.
Seth, Chris, we really appreciate y'all's time. Thanks for being on the show today.
I wanted to say one more thing.
Oh, please, one more thing. Or as many things as you want.
I think there's a tendency to look around and be like, oh man, all the easy problems have been solved, right? There's a great blog post by a guy I really respect. His name's Kevin Kelly, and the post is called "You Are Not Late." And the genesis of the premise of the post is basically actually, there's never been a better time. There's never been a better time. There's never been more available tools, more access, more educational resources for smart, enterprising, ambitious young people to go start companies to solve the problems of the day. And if you look around in the physical world around us, there are problems everywhere. And if there's one message that I would give to your guys' audience is that anybody with a little bit of initiative, ambition, and willingness to be told no many times can go start something that ends up shaking the world in a meaningful way. And there's no better time to get started than right now.
Seth, Chris, looking at that camera, where can people find you? X, LinkedIn, website? Tell us.
Mytra.ai. That's our website, and from there you can find us on LinkedIn. You can look at our blog posts, etc.
And we're at Eclipse.vc, and you can find me across all social channels.
Awesome. Guys, thank y'all so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jackson, appreciate it.